Well, hi everybody, Doug Reid here again. I just got an email from a fellow who asked a question that I always enjoy answering. This fellow is thinking about getting a Shopsmith, getting pretty serious about it, but he had heard from some source that Shopsmith saw blades were proprietary and having to do with the size of the hole in the saw blade itself. So I want to take a few minutes today and talk a little bit about that. First of all, we're going to have to go back a little bit in history to understand why Shopsmith uses the bigger hole in their blade. Let me show you what we're talking about here. This is your Shopsmith with a 10-inch blade with a 1.25" hole in it, whereas you're probably more used to a saw blade that has that 5/8" hole in it, something like that. Well, why does this happen? Does Shopsmith do that so you're locked into buying their saw blades? And the answer is absolutely not. If we go back in history to the 1950 and before, what you would find is that the normal table saw for the home shop had an 8-inch blade, and engineers figured out that an 8-inch blade would work just fine with a 5/8" hole, so that's what they ended up doing. Well, Shopsmith decided in the early 50s that they were going to step up to a 10-inch blade, and back then a 10-inch blade was considered a commercial size, almost like what we would think of as a 12-inch blade today. So they went to the 10-inch blade to give more depth of cut and just make it a more usable machine. Well, they figured out, actually engineers had figured out before that with the commercial size blades, that in order to use a 10-inch blade effectively in the very best way you could, you needed to have a bigger arbor size, and that size was 1.25". That was ideal. So Shopsmith went with the 1.25" arbor size. Well, here's where it gets a little crazy. Some of the other saw companies decided that they were going to start making 10-inch blades to compete with the Shopsmith, but they didn't want to have to retool everything, and it sort of makes sense. If you think about the way that those saws are set up with a 5/8" motor shaft, it would be a pretty big deal to have to retool that all the way up to the bigger size. So anyway, what they started doing was ordering blades manufactured, a 10-inch blade with a 5/8" hole in it, and that sort of worked out. The problem with that is if you have a big blade with a small arbor hole, you tend to get this vibration, this little wobble going on. And what do they do about that? And they do this to this day. They said, well, you can just put stabilizing washers on either side of your blade, and that will reduce that vibration. And it works fine. And the problem with that is, what do you lose when you put a stabilizing washer on a blade? Well, you lose depth of cut, of course. Now, does it make any sense at all to go with a bigger blade and then lose the depth of cut? And of course it doesn't. So Shopsmith has always gone with the idea that to get the maximum depth of cut and the best blade stability, you want to stay with that 1.25" blade. So that's the reason for that. You know, if you think about it, all the other products that Shopsmith makes, the bandsaw blades and the belt sander belts and strip sander and scroll saw and so on, they're all standard sizes. You know, you can get them any number of different places. So that's not the reason they do the blade that way. It's really to make it the best blade possible. By the way, if you have a lot of 5/8" saw blades already, which is what this fellow that emailed me was asking about, you don't need to worry about that because Shopsmith makes a 5/8" arbor. It looks like this, and as you can see, it's a pretty massive thing. It's got a big whacking amount of steel on that, but that's a 5/8" arbor for the Shopsmith, so you can use your blades on it. On the other hand, if you want the very best blades, in my opinion, you go to CMT or to Forrest. I've used Forrest for many years, and they offer an 1.25" hole in their 10-inch blades for Shopsmith owners, so that's another option that you can't have. So anyway, I hope that sort of clears that issue up, and if you have any comments or questions about that, shoot me an email at shopsmithdoug@gmail.com, and if you'd like an invitation to one of my webinars, let me know about that, and I'll set you up with that. Thanks for watching.